missed a good one last time. Well,
Almost made that liver biopsy worth it, huh? Almost made that liver biopsy worth it. They implied that I would be there an hour after operation or biopsy. When it got done, you need to be a couch potato instead of, just go on. That's why I wasn't here.
yep, I understand. Okay.
And I had another problem today. Hopefully he's got an alternate, which I told him he'd need, because my wife made an damn doctor's appointment at 5:30.
Today,
Yeah.
we'll be out.
So I need to leave about 15 to 5:20. Brokaw's office is up the hill, right? Is that right? Okay.
Okay, if you all would take a seat.
By the Department of Environmental Protection, St. Johns River Water Management District, and U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And then there's a wildlife management plan required. St. Augustine grass, which uses a lot of water, is not permitted. It would have to be Bahia Bermuda, zoysia, or some other similar grass. There's a requirement for 1.5 acres of recreational area, which includes a swimming pool. Those are the major requirements within this PUD. The rest of the document is standard PUD language. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would like to request one minor change to the document and give you two clarifications. The minor change comes under section 3B2, which is prohibited uses. We need to remove the word condominiums as a prohibited use. The city attorney explained this morning that the word condominiums refers to a form of ownership. So we need to remove that. Again, this will still only allow single-family units. There is a clarification I'd like to make for the record involving section 6A under landscaping. The intent of the wording there is to require a fence along property lines on that northern boundary of the property, which has adjacent lots. In other words, if there is a platted lot on this property, there would have to be a fence there along that northern boundary next to plantation. In areas where there are no lots and it's wetland to wetland, there would not be a fence required. And then a final clarification would just be under section 7 and 8, which are site access and transportation. Is the intent of the PUD to require roadways within the project to be constructed to city standards, and that FDOT, as per normal use, would control the need for any improvements at Great Egret Boulevard and US 27 if the traffic study and DOT determine that they are needed. It's not the intent of the document to require improvements within phase 1 of White Marsh. Actually, I don't believe we could do that. So with that, staff is recommending approval of these cases. Mr. Greg Beliveau and Mr. Mike Rankin are here from LPG Land Planning Group of Mount Dora. Thank you.
I'm back.
Hey, Greg.
Greg Beliveau, LPG. Good afternoon. This is another housing project. It's predominantly single family in nature. For your information, we pulled the development order for the plantation, by the way, to see if we had any compatibility with their development order. And lo and behold, we're very consistent with theirs. Their development order, which was amended in 2007, allows for 3,050 units, of which 565 can be multifamily. And when you see a later illustration, you'll see that one of the pods that's adjacent to us is very consistent with our development scenario. Their net density, by the way, is over 3 units per acre. and their gross density is 1.6 something. So they're also very close to what we're asking for. The project next door to us to the east, is the phase 1 of our project. And in that plat, you'll notice that there's a stub out to the west. And that stub out was always preserved for access to our property. And it was always the intention that there would be a project due west to a future development, which was this phase. So this phase was also always intended. And there was actually solicited 2006 and then renewed in 2009 with the Corps of Engineers for our causeway, and those permits were approved. So those were anticipated and those were sought and approved. So access was always anticipated, as well as there were covenants within the deeds of phase 1 for those homeowners to anticipate the development of phases 1, 2, and 3. So according to my client, those are, I don't know where they're buried, but they're supposedly buried in those documents. In fact, some property owners who initially wanted to build in phase 1 pulled out of phase 1 when those were made aware to them. So that's per my client, and he states that those documents were in 2008 or 2007 and 2008. Our request for annexation and future land use and PUD, if you look at the county's future land use designation and you look at the city's future land use designation, we actually reduce the density by 1. So we're actually reducing the impacts by 1 unit per acre. And if you look at our PUD, we actually reduce the impacts even further. The impacts by the county's future land use in its net use is 364. We're asking for 297. So when you look at those impacts, our impacts on all items that you look at, water, sewer, traffic, etc., schools, and all those good things, we have less impacts than the existing future land use category that's in the county. So we're all to the positive. So these are all good things. Now let's get to the all-important why we need to be left vacant so it can be enjoyed by all our neighbors as a continued environmental setback area so everybody can use it for open space and watch all the lovely animals hop, skip, and jump and be left as a nature preserve forever. Our environmental analysis looked at this property and actually had to go through 2 environmental agencies to have it signed off on. We have a sign-off letter for the sand skinks. This one did go through a sand skinks evaluation. It was signed off and it has been cleared for sand skinks. They also did a scrub jay survey, and they did a scrub jay habitat. There is a area that is used for scrub jays, and that area was identified and found by the agencies that our development will not impact in a negative way the scrub jays where they want to play and live and flourish. And it was signed off. So we have that. The only thing we have to worry about is our good friends, the gopher tortoises. So we have to go ahead and take care of the gopher tortoises, which we will. And we'll provide anyone gopher tortoise recipes if they wish to participate. No, we can't do that. We have to take care of them the proper way and go through the proper permitting and relocate them, which we will do. That we will do when we get to the next phases, if you so allow us to do those next phases, but that happens just prior to development. You can't do that early because more gopher tortoises may show up. So you have to do it just prior to construction. But the site was looked at very thoroughly for endangered species and followed up by the agencies because of the follow-up for sand skinks and for scrub jays. So this thing was really well covered. When we got to the and because of that, we've followed that through and we've submitted those documents to the City of Leesburg. They have those documents in their files. So this one has had that evaluation. These documents have been provided. The analysis for utilities and analysis for all the other items have been submitted. We feel that this development fits in, is very consistent with the trends that are on the two developments next door. It is heavily buffered because of its terrain that's already there. We have to put all those wetlands in conservation areas. We can't negatively impact those areas. They have to stay in a conservation easement. We have to have upland buffers around those wetlands. The only impact we're allowed to have, which has been permitted, is the road coming into the property. And that road, by the way, has been there since the 60s. This area was a grove. There was a grove road that went through that, what is now, I call it the causeway. That was a grove road that has been there as an impacted area, and it was recognized as such when it was permitted. And those impact recognized, and that's why the permit was one of the reasons why the permit was issued. And that is the only thing we're allowed to impact. Now we have to mitigate for that. I mean, you just can't go in there and put in a boulevard and call it a day. I mean, you have to go through that process and then mitigate for those impacts. And that is my less than, I think I broke my record on not talking for a half hour. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer any of the board's questions. And I'll follow up any other discussions once the opposition gets through with their input.
Thank you, Greg. Does the commission have any questions of Greg at this time? Hearing none. Candy, do you have the list of people that want to speak? People that want to speak? Thank you, Candy. Okay, I'm going to take these as they are given to me. Forgive me, some of this writing isn't as clear as it probably should be, but Ellen Spiritus. Ellen, if you would, you may come to the microphone and you may remove your mask as you speak. Please state your name and where you live.
My name is Ellen Spiritus. I live in the plantation of Leesburg, Riverside Village, which backs up to the wetlands that are shown on the map.
Is that at 24136 Robin Wood Street?
Correct.
Thank you.
I believe Mr. Miller, and forgive me because I can't see who was speaking, mentioned something about a traffic light or some kind of
There would have to be a traffic study, and if the traffic study and Florida Department of Transportation were to review that and say improvements are needed, then the developer would have to pay for those improvements entirely, and that would be at the intersection of Great Egret and US 27. For something of this size, it generally comes down to if anything is needed based on the study, it could be an additional acceleration, deceleration area or something like that, generally, but I don't know at this point until the studies are reviewed by FDOT and we get comments back on that.
Okay, so...
But they would have to pay for it regardless.
Not for nothing. I don't care who has to pay for it. My concern is I go out the south gate of the plantation. A lot of us that are here today go out of the south gate of the plantation. They put a traffic light there, and they're not that far to White Marsh, and I understand why the people that live there might want one. All of a sudden, you've got traffic backed up past the south gate. We can't get out. Emergency vehicles can't get out. emergency vehicles can't get in. This is just something that I don't know whether that is something that has to be taken into consideration, but that's something that I'm a little concerned about.
Okay.
The other one, I know the gentleman from the development mentioned environmental impact. It's my understanding that we have panthers back there, and I was wondering if anything was discovered or done, because I'm sure Florida panthers are protected, so I don't know if anything was done about that.
I would have the applicant respond to that one, please.
Okay, and my last issue, you mentioned something about a fence on the north side.
Yes, ma'am.
Where it abuts
Plantation.
Plantation.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm assuming you are looking at Rosedown, which is the small subdivision to the north, and perhaps Sable Ridge. These are neighborhoods that I know you probably don't know.
The intent of what we're saying there is that if there are lots on Plantation side and lots on this side, because there's a lot of area where it's open space to open space. Anywhere there are lots to lots, there would have to be a fence on this one, on the White Marsh side, in order to provide additional buffer. The property there's a line or an area of property along the south side of Plantation. I believe it's about 70 feet wide, give or take, for where the golf carts go through.
Right.
So this would be, you would take this property plus the 25-foot required buffer, and then you'd have the fence in that area. So it'd be a good amount of open space there.
Okay, and I just want to take this opportunity, Mr. Miller, to thank you for the time you spent talking to me just the other day.
Absolutely, glad to.
Did you have a question? Okay. One of my neighbors wants to know if the fence that is being looked at, if it's needed, would it be a physical fence? I mean, like a wooden fence, or like bushes?
No, it would have to be a physical fence made of PVC or some material like that, solid actual fence.
All right. Does anybody else from my neighborhood want to say anything?
Okay, thank you very much, Ellen.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. All right, the next person, Ludwig Bravetta. Ludwig, B-A-V-E-T-T-A. Please, sir, state your name and where you live.
My name is Ludwig Bavetta. I live on Silver Lake, 8917 Silver Lake Drive, Leesburg.
That's
right across from the airport.
8917?
8917.
8917, yes, sir. Silver Lake, Florida?
Yeah, no, Silver Lake Drive is it goes around the lake.
Okay, sir, this is not dealing with that whatsoever.
I know, I made a mistake.
We're trying to stay on subject here, sir.
Yes.
We're dealing with the White Marsh Phase 2.
Right, I was in the wrong situation. I was talking about the development that's going to be developed off Silver Lake. That's what I was concerned about.
That will be brought up, sir, at another meeting.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm sorry to disrupt
No
you.
problem, no problem.
September 24, Mr. Chairman.
September 24th, Ludwig. Yes, sir. Okay. Jill?
September.
Okay. I'm going to pass on you then as well. Dennis B. something. Please state your name, sir, and where you live.
Good evening, thank you. Dennis B., 5508 Great Egret Drive in White Marsh.
Thank you, sir.
I want to thank you for showing us this nice information this evening. I'm a little concerned on the transparency of all the information shown tonight. I would like to ask a question of how much of this information was available before tonight's meeting.
All of it.
Pardon?
All of it.
And how is that available?
You just contact our office, and we can get you PDFs. We can put it on the web. It's under Florida Sunshine Law, so if it comes into our office, you can see it if you ask.
So it was available before this evening?
Absolutely.
Okay. And how would I have known that?
I'm sorry?
How would I have been aware of that?
If you live within 200 feet of the boundary,
Which I do, thank you.
then you get a letter.
I did.
Okay, and then once you get that letter, the phone numbers and emails should be on that letter, and you can just call us or make an appointment and come by. Not a problem at all. As a matter of fact, because these cases still have to go to City Commission, you're welcome to give us a call and come on by and look at the files.
Yeah. It didn't state anywhere in the letter that more information was available. Actually, I went to the website for the commission and had the agenda for this evening. Didn't have anywhere that more information was available. Found that disappointing. I did get 2 very nice aerial shots. Didn't have any information close to what you've shown this evening. Just showed the area. I want to thank you for putting up the very nice orange sign stating of where it was going to take place. I would ask why it wasn't made available at the other entrance where the entire community may have an opportunity to view it.
The requirement is 1 sign at the public roadway.
Okay.
We met the requirement.
Is there any requirement to advise the White Marsh community beyond the houses that are at 200 feet?
No.
Is there any interest to let the rest of the community know?
I'm sorry?
Is there any interest by the Planning Commission to let the rest of the community be aware that there's going to be possibly over 150 houses built?
Is there any what?
Is there any interest to let the White Marsh community be aware that there would be possibly 150 housing units added on to that development? I understand it's not required, but is there any interest in letting them be aware of it, either by letting HOA be aware of it or maybe sending a letter?
Sir, that's why we're having this meeting.
That's the purpose.
We're having this meeting to inform you and to get your input on this so that we can make a recommendation to the City Commission. That's what this is all about. That's why you're here, and if there's any information you need, we're giving it to you as soon. All you have to do is ask for it, sir.
Thank you. That's what I'm doing now. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Go ahead.
Is the information available that the gentleman, I think his name Greg, that stated that there were some information that he had? Would that information be available as well?
That's the information that we have here in the file that you could call us and we'll give to you. That's the same thing.
So you have the same information he does as far as environmental studies done?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Okay, Lisa M. Christie. Please, Miss Lisa, if you would give us your name and your residence.
I'm Lisa Christie. I live at 5720 Great Egret Drive in Leesburg. I'm the White Marsh subdivision. We're the very first home in the subdivision when you come in, and we will be heavily impacted by any traffic change. We see several hundred cars a day coming in and out of the neighborhood as is, and an impact on a 2-lane road which cannot be expanded. Where the homes sit on the road, we're not set back like they are in the plantation, is going to have a heavy effect on children and pets and people who walk those pets. Furthermore, the study that was done on the environmental issues is complete. There are at least 28 Florida Sandhill Cranes residing year-round in this area. They nest in the wetlands on the ground. They do not perch. They are a protected species in Florida, and they cannot be moved. They're non-migratory, and there are, again, about 28 of them currently that have been roosting in the wetlands that they want to develop and training their colts to fly in the pasture. That roadway...
What birds are these?
These are Florida Sandhill Cranes, and
Yes,
they are
ma'am.
protected. I heard mention of gopher turtles, but these are Florida Sandhill Cranes, and they cannot be relocated, and if you eat them, you will be severely punished, not just by people, but probably by the Almighty.
Correct. I love them too.
We all love them, and they're very well cared for. I have documented them with the International Crane Foundation daily. They are roosting in our marsh area. There was a family that gave birth to colts in the wetlands that is included in that plat, and they train their babies to fly in that pasture and the other adjoining pastures. I have film daily posted to the Love of Cranes website, which is sponsored by the International Crane Foundation, of these babies being hatched this year in the wetlands. Daily I posted their upbringing in the pasture from a distance, always from a distance, and anybody driving through our neighborhood is rude to miss 20 to 25 Florida Sandhill Cranes stopping traffic, walking across roads with their children sometimes, and if all they saw was gopher turtles, then I submit they probably didn't really do a good job of driving through our neighborhood. As Mr. Bean pointed out, the sign was to the back of the neighborhood. I live at the entrance. I didn't even know this was happening, and I will probably be the most heavily impacted by such development. I love development. I think development is a great thing, and I'm all for it, but it has to be done wisely, preserving our wetlands, preserving the integrity of our wildlife. Leesburg, Florida has a sandhill crane on its city emblem. What a wonderful thing to push sandhill cranes in our area as an attraction, as a boon to investors, not something that you disregard and don't even mention in light of gopher turtles. Okay, enough about them. The other problem is the lift station. We have a lift station which is located directly across the street from our home. They are working on the lift station several times a week, sometimes more than once a day, to support the 100 houses that are in our neighborhood. What are they going to do when there are another 150 or some other ungodly number of houses flushing their toilets down that lift station without making improvements to it? So please consider the improvements to the lift station. Our water bills are already unyieldingly high. We are paying a higher water bill than really, if you look at your calculations, could be higher than what is allowed by Florida law. We should never be paying more than 50% higher than what any resident of the city of Leesburg is paying. I talked with the city commissioners a few years ago when I moved in 2013 and was told that the reason that the bills are so high was to dissuade us from using excess water. Well, we don't use much water, which means we can't water our lawns as we would like because we end up with a $300 water bill. That is significantly higher with the same gallon usage that you would pay if you were living in Leesburg, even paying the Leesburg taxes on it. And I submit these things to you respectfully. The development has to be a good thing for the area. The wetland protection takes precedence over that in Florida when it comes to Florida Sandhill Cranes. Also, backing up the marsh into our retention pond areas will cause flooding, which threatens our home and can cause floodplain levels to rise as the wetlands build back up. We don't want to drain them. We do not want to drain them, but we do want to manage this carefully. That's all I have. I want to thank you, and God bless everyone for being here today in these challenging times. Any questions for me?
No, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Protect our cranes.
Okay, Greg, do you want a counterpoint, sir? Did I miss anybody that wanted to speak? Thank you.
Can you pull up that? Can you pull up the two? Can you pull up the two?
Commissioner Coleman has to be excused at this moment.
Well, they should follow your exhibits. I guess they didn't. Okay. All right, well, just the comments that to follow through, I'll go last to first. I'll address yours first, Lisa. First of all, the issue on the cranes. we can't impact the wetlands negatively, period. So if the cranes are there and they're doing their thing, we can't negatively impact them. I have Sandhill Cranes in my yard, where I live. And they thrive and they walk around, and we don't, in fact, I have turkeys and wild turkeys and all kinds of animals. But we're not allowed to negatively impact the wetlands. And like I said earlier, we have to put them in a conservation easement. So they're going to be set aside and left alone. And as I said earlier on the scrub jays, that's also part of it. We have to set aside the scrub jays. So we can't touch those either. So that's a given. 100-year flood impacts, we have to address the 100-year floods as well. And in our stormwater design, we can't impact off-site any more than, it's against St. John's rules. So when we get our St. John's permit, we have to do a pre and post. So we have to go through that process. So we can't flood anybody next door. That's a no-no. So when we get our St. John's permit, we have to follow through with those rules. On the upgrades on the lift station, if we're going to be utilizing that lift station for our sewage, then we have to upgrade. And if we have to upgrade that lift station, that's on our dime. That's just a standard operating procedure for the City of Leesburg and every city utility. If we got to upgrade the pumps, if we have to grade anything, then we have to do that, and that's just a normal operating cost for a developer. And that doesn't affect White Marsh existing. That's our cost and our normal operating. That's just a normal operating cost for a developer. The other items on the fence on the abutting property owners on Plantation, you had asked. We have 2 residential pods on the north where Plantation's abutting us. We've agreed to put the fence along those 2 properties, or those 2 pods on the north side, and Plantation has 2 pods. It just so happens across from us. So we'll put the fence along those 2. And we have no problem with that. When it comes to traffic, this track, from the history that I've been told by the client, was always anticipated to be phase. So therefore, traffic was always intended to go through from phase 2 and 3 through phase 1 to get to 27. That's the only way you can get there from here. There's no other way. When we met in pre-app for the City of Leesburg, one of the issues being, how do you get there from here? Well, the plat that was recorded shows that the only way to get there from here is through that plat's identified location that recognized that was the way to go. That was it. And you had to go through there to get to US 27. It was reserved for that purpose. And like I stated, the impact has actually been reduced through our PUD from what the maximum units that could be there, even under the current county's designation. That's all I have. One of the interesting things is our single-family pod that's on the north, abutting the Plantation pod to the north, is actually a villa pod. It's not a single-family pod. It is a villa pod with 40-foot lots, where we have a single-family pod. So it's interesting that that's what the land use is there. And I had an exhibit, and I thought they'd put it in for here, but they can't seem to pull it up. But that's what's interesting. If you look at the graphic from the Plantation development, that's their villa pod opposite our single family. So we thought that was kind of ironic that that's what we have across from us. But anyway, that's all I have. I can answer any more questions. We would obviously ask that you give us a favorable recommendation to City Commission. But we have to abide by all St. John's and all environmental rules. And in the file are those documents. So if you would look at it, Dennis, and see if you can find. If you have any questions, they have my contact information, and I'll be glad to answer your questions.
Okay, if you have questions of Greg, you're going to have to come to the microphone so it can be on record. And again, state your name.
Again, I'm Lisa M. Christie at 5720 Great Egret Drive in Leesburg.
Thank you.
I would like to point out that Orchard Drive that leads into the pasture predates any construction in that area or plans for construction, because the gentleman keeps referring to it as planned for development. That road was used by the farmer. You can check Google Earth. Back in the early 1990s, there were 3 structures there that used Orchard Drive for access in and out. That was not built for development.
Okay.
Second, I wish to point out that when we purchased our home in White Marsh in 2013, yes, we were told that there were plans for White Marsh 2 and 3, but that the locations were not to be disclosed, and they would not disclose them to us. Now, I will go and look and see if I signed anything that agreed that that area back there would be developed, or that any area would be developed, but I don't recall that. And I was told that if they do build it, it was quiet because, quote, people might get upset.
Okay, is there a question here?
The question is, why do you keep saying that that was developed, that the road was built with development in mind?
If you recall in my initial testimony, I stated that there was a grove road there in the 60s because there was a citrus grove there. And the initial impacts where we now have our boulevard was a grove road, and that's why when we got our permits, that's why the permitting agencies gave us the permits, because there was initial impacts to the wetlands because of there being a grove road. And because when it's easier, or the agencies tend to give permits when initial impacts have already been there. And that's why. And when you look at the plat, they basically lined up that stub out to match up with that old grove road as a connection to a future development. And I have a printout of those villas. This is what I sent over, and you can pass it around, is the villa section that's north of us in our single family area. But it's interesting that we have those 40-footers over there. But anyway, it is an old impact. We sent aerials over a plantation from 1964, 68, before they were built, and it shows our project south of there when it was the Grove, with the Grove Road accessing our uplands. Yes, ma'am.
Please state your name, ma'am.
Ellen Spiritus, 24136 Robinwood Street in Leesburg. I'm going back to the fence, and you mentioned that we clarified the 2 neighborhoods north of the property that you said vinyl fences would be put up. And then you said something about 2 more neighborhoods that backed up that you were going to put fences in. My question is are you talking about the homes that are in White Marsh 1 now, or no? Okay, doesn't matter then.
If you look on the master plan, the master plan is going west to east instead of north to south. If you look at it on the right, you'll see, which is to the right, you'll see the pod that abuts to the right. That one abuts the villas section on Plantation. That will have the vinyl fence. The pod that looks like tan, looks like a finger towards the turnpike, that will have a vinyl fence. You see that finger going towards the turnpike? Yeah, that beige. Yeah, that will have a vinyl fence along its northern property line. A vinyl fence, 6 feet tall, stockade style.
And is it going to affect both neighborhoods that are villages, whatever you want to call them, that are, there's 2.
There's the plantations to the,
Just to the,
yes, yes, yes.
But there's 2 neighborhoods. There's Rosedowne Village, which is where
I don't know what the name of.
No, I understand, but that's where the Scrub Jay have their
Mm.
neighborhood. And then just north of that is another neighborhood, but I can't tell from.
All I know is that when we looked at the aerials, there's a golf course corridor, and where we abut Plantation with those 2 fingers, we'll put our fence and we'll have landscaping on our side, fence on your side, fence on our side, fence on your side, landscaping on our side. So all you'll see is a white vinyl fence 6 feet tall.
Okay, but you had mentioned something about other fences.
No, that's it. That's the only place they're going.
Okay. We have a hand raised in the back there. I can't hear what he's saying.
Yeah, hello, my name is Carlos. I live in White Marsh. I just got one question for him, I don't know, for government agencies or
You
whatever.
speak into the microphone, please, sir.
I say, my name is Carlos, I live in White Marsh. I got one question for him or government or city or whatever. On the past, we already have issue with the entrance. The entrance was washing away, and we have to get engineering into, to get involved into it. And what was the other thing? The walkway. It cracked already and give out one. So that have been fixed already. My concern is we got 150 people 120 houses right now, 102, plus another 300. What's going to happen if that road collapses and we need to get an ambulance, cop, or something? How are we going to get out of subdivision?
Well, hopefully your road was built to county specs when you were constructed, and it was accepted to county specs. And if it's been accepted into the county road system, it better not collapse. So, I mean, that's not our, that's and it was accepted into the system, so and it should be under county maintenance. So that's where it's, now if it's, well, well, then you need to be bugging them now to fix it and keep it up and maintained, because your current users and your current taxes should be maintaining that road, regardless of where they are or not. I mean, that's just, now, like what Mr. Miller said, when we do our traffic study, that entrance, the entrance going onto US 27, we have to look at our impacts to that entrance. And we may or may not have to do some improvements to that entrance. And that will be looked at that time. And we don't know what those are.
Correct.
Now, we know it won't be a traffic light, because a traffic light with only, about 400 total units isn't warranted. Because we did Royal Highlands, and Royal Highlands didn't have a traffic light until they hit over 1,000 units. So we're not going to have that.
Okay, I think there was a lady here in the blue and green that had a question.
I'm not going anywhere.
Toby Weber, 24104 Robin Wood Street in the Plantation.
Thank you.
Sure. So I had two concerns. One is, from the way the map looks, the access to the back property, where I understand the villas or the multi-family units are going to be, there is a place called Dilly Marsh, a marshland, that is in the way of those units. So how are you going to protect the wetlands and still have that development where it is?
Mr. Belleville, can you address that?
Well, obviously, we have to go through permitting, et cetera, and find the upland systems that are in there and mitigate for any wetland impacts.
Man, you have to realize that all of this has to go through several phases of approval before the first shovel of dirt that can be moved. And so many agencies have to approve this and follow. And Greg's got to go by, cross his T's and dot his I's to get it done right.
The reason that I and Ellen are both, one of the reasons that Ellen and I are both very concerned about the fencing is that in the phase one development that exists now, there are a number of common borders in the community called Riverside, which is where we both live. and Brampton, which is the first community on the left as you enter the south entrance to the plantation, that have common borders with White Marsh. And those have been addressed not by permanent fencing, not by material fencing, but by bushes that have not been well maintained, have holes in them where people sneak through, not protected, entirely for security for our neighborhoods. And our residents have been primarily responsible for maintaining those bushes. And so we are quite concerned about additional development in areas bordering our communities and what kind of fencing is going to happen there, because what currently is in place is not adequate. So that's the concern. And however you want to address that, feel free.
Well, we can address our phase. We can't address previous phases.
Correct.
So we'll take care of our phase.
Okay, we're going to call this quits here. And do you have one more question, ma'am?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Ellen Spiritus, 24136 Robinwood Street in Leesburg. Do you have any information on the types of homes that are going to be developed? Are these going to be single family? Are they? There has been a concern expressed on social media that it's low-income housing. No. Okay, thank you.
The answer is no. It's market.
I don't know if there is such a thing anymore, but
No, it's not.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, I would like to bring up, and thank you, Ms. Ellen, for bringing up the social media comment. Social media is fun, and it's fun to keep up with your friends, but if you want to find out anything about what the city or a government is doing, it's the very last place to go, because we hear it day after day about different things that we're doing that we didn't know we were doing, and we're obviously not doing. And so thank you for bringing that up, because people do get a lot of bad information on it, and I know that it's well intended, but it does happen.
And I love it when I get it and see it on Facebook. And I didn't even know I was building this stuff that I was supposed to be building on Facebook. And I'm going, what? And it's not true.
okay, sir, you have another question? Sir, you have, well, we've had all the statements. We're just looking for questions so you can get more answers, but go ahead to the microphone and make your statement, sir. Please, sir, you have to go to the microphone. It has to be on record.
Dennis Bean, 5508 Great Egret Drive, Leesburg. I wouldn't mock social media. Most of the people in this room would not be here if I didn't make the meeting available on social media. That's how most of these people found out about it. Thank you.
Sure, you bet. It has its purpose, sir, and sometimes it's very good and sometimes it's very bad. All right. Any of the commission here have any questions of Mr. Beliveau?
I've got one for Greg. Greg, you're going to need to go through...
Speak into the microphone if you would, Michael.
Yeah, excuse me. Greg, you're going to need to go through the full state environmental gamut, correct, on this
Correct.
thing?
All over again, yes.
Okay. You don't know if that specifically does do the Sandhill Cranes, but like...
Well, if they're nesting there, and they do nest in the wetlands, and we are preserving the wetlands. So we'll identify where they're nesting, and since we're preserving them anyway, it is what it is.
So that'll certainly be considered then?
Yes.
Okay. One other thing, and this goes back to my question on one of your other projects. How many acres are we impacting here, and how many acres are we preserving as wetlands?
Let me get the big sheet. My eyes are old. I can't. We have 66 acres of wetlands, but we're also setting aside another 27 acres of uplands out of the almost 60 acres.
So 50%.
Yeah, I mean, we're preserving a good bit of property.
Okay. So 50%. Prior use was a grove. Is
Yep.
It's currently improved pasture now, or what is
Yeah,
it?
yes it is.
Okay, so it's already impacted.
Oh, yes, yes.
It's impacted agricultural right now. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Mr. Bellevue?
I do have a question. Greg,
Pull your mask and speak.
did you say on the earlier deeds in phase one that there was a stipulation that there would be a future phase 2 or 3 using the entrance that's coming into the subdivision now?
My client has told me that there's some document that was in fact a covenant of annexation on some document that when first phase was done, that there was, when it was annexable, the rest of it was the first phase was supposed to be able to be annexed by the city. Not automatic. The city has the option to annex it in.
Right.
I see.
Yeah, it's not automatic. It's like the same ones as several other cities have, that if the city elects to annex them in, they can. It's not automatic that they can just, they have to. If we annex in, they roll automatic. It's not that. They have the ability to, the city can exercise that right.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Wood. Commissioner Wood, any questions? Commissioner Halliday? Commissioner Mike? I hear no more discussion. I'll close this up to discussions and entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, would you like a combined motion?
That one at a time.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve public hearing case LSCP 20135, White Marsh Phase 2 and Phase 3 large-scale comp plan amendment.
I have a motion on the floor to approve. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye and raise your right hand.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. I'll entertain a motion on new business item number 4, the PUD, the rezoning, excuse me.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion on public hearing case PUD 20-136, White Marsh Phase 2 and Phase 3 plan unit development. Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Wood. All in favor signify by saying aye and raise your right hand.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please understand now, ladies and gentlemen that are here and concerned about this, thank you for being here. It means a lot for us, for y'all to be here to give us some input, see how you feel, and we make our judgments on that. Of course, this will go to the City Commission for their final approval, and please give me the dates on that.
Mr. Chairman, the dates will be first reading Monday, October 12. It's probably going to be back still in this room. At that time, all that information will be sent to the state for their required review, and then it will come back on Monday, January 11. Those are tentative and could change, so please call our office, let us, ask us any questions that you have, and we'll answer them. But those dates do sometimes change based on scheduling, so.
I think we all understand that. There's nothing etched in stone anymore. Thank you very much for coming. All right, fellow commissioners. Are there any announcements that anyone makes to make? I want to take a moment to, I was very proud of the commission, the last meeting we had. That was not an easy one to deal with, and I think we made the right decision. We'll see what the city commission wants to do, but I related a little bit to it when I moved to Leesburg in 1957, and John O'Kelly can relate to this. I rode my bike everywhere, and my dog followed me. And I put that comparison to that subdivision out there, and if I wanted to get on my bike and ride to see my buddy, it wasn't girlfriends, it was buddies back then, to go from a nice wide road down to a narrow road and try and move around and communicate. It was a safety issue for me, and I think all of us had our own reasons, but I just was very proud of the commission for what we decided to do and the fact that it was unanimous. Mr. Miller, do you have anything for the good of the order, sir?
September 24 promises to be an interesting meeting as well.
Yeah, we're going to deal with Silver Lake at that time. If I hear no more discussion.
I got a question.
Go ahead.
I know it's next month. I don't recall seeing what the total number of units they're going to request at that Silver Lake project on the 83.5 acres. Just curious.
1 second, Commissioner. 200 and 273.
273.
Okay, thank you.
That's a lot of potatoes in a 10-pound bag. And just for more information, that's Silver Lake and Radio Road and 44.
That one is Highway 44 directly north of the lots that are adjacent to the north side of Silver Lake.
Okay.
It is, if I can get my glasses here, 83.75 acres.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
If there's nothing else, we stand adjourned. I love my hammer.